Everybody, welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer for NC State on SI, Tucker Sennett, here joining you to talk some NC State Wolfpack men's basketball and kind of talk about the greater landscape of the college basketball recruiting world, the particularly men's college basketball. Um, and where NC State stands in this sort of unique situation that we're in with the class of 2026. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because we're now into October and there is only one top 10 commit according to 24/7 Sports to have committed to a school at this point. So there's still nine five-star or however many star recruits out there that have yet to commit to a school. And we're a little bit more than a month away from the season getting started. So that's pretty shocking. Normally, the recruiting class starts to become a little bit clearer, but this 2026 class, there's a lot going on. NC State does have a commit. Trayvon Carter-Givens, a four-star center from Southern California, became the first member of the 2026 recruiting class for Will Wade and his staff a couple weeks ago. And that was a nice start to the class, but obviously the Wolfpack wants to keep building on this roster and kind of ride this wave of Will Wade as he's here. And they'd like to be competitive for some of these high level recruits in 2026, but it's a unique situation. So let's dive into it a little bit. Most of this information is going to come from a report from CBS Sports' Matt Norlander, who sort of did the legwork on this, and I'm not paraphrasing, but I'm taking a lot of information that he provided. And what he discovered was there seems to be a common sense of skepticism amongst agents of these high school players in terms of the value that's going to be placed on their clients going into this recruiting cycle because revenue sharing has really changed everything, and schools and programs were able to throw massive numbers, not necessarily guaranteed, but massive financial packages at these recruits until this year with the House settlement sort of shaping the future of the revenue sharing system and the payment system. So these players are and these agents are not sure about what their market value is. The other thing is, and this sort of makes sense in the way that college basketball has moved in the past couple of years, there seems to be a greater value on high level transfer players who have played meaningful basketball already. Look at NC State. This is a team that's built of quality transfers built around one superstar, expensive transfer in Darian Williams from Texas Tech, who is the focal point of this team. But they went out and they identified who they wanted in the portal and they came up with the money to get them. And in the revenue sharing world, that's going to be harder to do for some of these schools that have football programs because according to Norlander, there's sort of some miscommunication or lack of clarity amongst college coaches about the resources that they're going to have at some of these schools, particularly in the SEC, because they have to pour so much money into their football programs to be competitive. So that's definitely a complicated issue. I know the Big East is trying to take advantage of that while that system is in place, and I know the Big Ten and the SEC are trying to sort of combat that the best that they can because, they want to be the most relevant always. So the ACC is kind of in a weird middle ground with some programs that are more basketball focused and others that are more football focused. And I think NC State kind of senses the moment that it has with Will Wade and is willing to kind of give him more resources than some of his peers might have. And they were able to go out and assemble a roster that way. But as for recruiting, it's a unique situation because how much value do you place on a four-star freshman who, if things aren't going his way, can jump ship and go to another school after just one season or quit on your team, during the season now with how easy it is. And it's a sizable financial commitment that you're making to a player that's never played a college basketball game. And that's definitely a worthy issue for college coaches that I totally understand. I mean, if I were in that position, that's something, I would want the more experienced player rather than the freshman. Obviously, there's always going to be freshmen. You saw at Duke last year, they had three that carried them to a Final Four appearance. There's always going to be freshmen like that in every class. Even in a weak 2026 class, there's still going to be talented players. And it's just about identifying the ones that you think are going to be ready to perform in that year. 2026 might be limited in that area just because it's a bad high school year. It happens. It's not totally bonkers. We've seen it before, and we've also seen a lot of five-star recruits go places and not pan out. So this is something that can happen, and I think reacting to it in the way that, this is going to be the new norm is probably an overreaction. So there's just not enough data to make a claim that this is the new norm. Recruiting classes are not going to be as strong or are not going to be as valued as highly. So we'll see how this goes with the class of 2027. There's certainly some talent there. And it'll be interesting to see how NC State approaches this the rest of the way because we're reaching a point where kids are going to have to start making decisions that, might not be their first choice. So there might be some opportunities for NC State to move in here and maybe steal some talent from some other schools in the recruiting process. They do have their eyes on three 2026 recruits that are apparently pretty hot on the Wolfpack. You got five-star recruit in Mika Murinen, the Finnish big man, great name. Um, you got Darren Rippey Jr., a four-star guard who is certainly intriguing, and then Cole Clower has some updates about his recruiting. We'll see what happens there, but I expect NC State to gain some steam in the basketball recruiting cycle in the next few weeks, just because they want to get some of this done before the season starts. It's a year-round job now, so it's definitely different than it used to be, but I think there's definitely a focus and an emphasis on getting as much done as they can now and securing a couple commitments before the season starts. And then I'm sure some of these recruits want to see what things look like. I think there's definitely some not necessarily skepticism, but intrigue into this NC State program. And I would understand if I were a high schooler not wanting to jump in without seeing them play a single game yet. I get it. That's a risk that you would be taking and with no information, it's maybe one that the families don't want to make quite yet. We'll see what actually happens, but that's just how I see the next month or so going. So that's all I got on the 2026 recruiting circus for college basketball. If you want more NC State basketball info, you can follow me on social media at Senate Tucker. You can follow our website on Twitter at Wolfpack on SI. You can also follow the Wolfpack on SI Facebook page and find more episodes of the Sports Videos on SI podcast. I messed that up. More episodes of the NC State Insider Podcast on the Sports Videos on SI YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again tomorrow.